Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's workshop on creating a text-based adventure game. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. And also know that we're almost near the end of the quarter, so let's finish strong. So before we get into the workshop, let me just tell you about what all about HackDavis. So what is HackDavis? So HackDavis is UC Davis's annual hackathon, and a hackathon is essentially an event where you gather with a group of students to create a project that addresses a social issue and solves a problem. Last year, we had over 600 students that developed projects for social good, and no experience is necessary, and all majors are welcome. So some of the stats from HackDavis 2020, we had over 600 participants and over 110 social good projects submitted. 48% of them were first timers, and we had over 20 sponsors, and we raised over 63K. And in addition, we also had 10K in prizes. And I'm gonna be showing you a video on what HackDavis 2020 was like. Oops, my bad. Right, hopefully that got a lot of you guys hyped up. So what exactly does HackDavis 2020 look like? 2021 look like? So HackDavis 2021 will take place on January 16 to 17, and it'll be held virtually. Our live website will be live sometime this week, so keep a lookout for that, and applications will open shortly afterwards. I encourage everyone to apply and try it out. So let's get into the workshop. So our workshop today, we're going to be building a text-based adventure game in Python. And some of the goals that we have are setting up the coding environment, learning basic Python fundamentals, and also creating a game. And just out of curiosity, have any of you guys heard of Python, or how many of you guys have experience with it? Awesome, cool. All right, let's get started. So I'll just basically introduce some of the concepts, basic Python concepts for you guys. So first, we'll be introducing the concept of variables. So what are variables? Variables are essentially containers to store data values. And in Python, variables don't have a type declaration. So in other languages, in other programming languages, when you declare a variable, you have to tell the computer whether it is an integer or a string. But Python is smart enough to figure that out on your own. So if we look at our example here, we have a variable x, which is set to 1. And we have a string, which is set to hello world. So basically, this is just telling Python, all right, let's create a variable and set it to 1. And let's also create a string. And in that string, this variable will contain the word hello world. Okay. And down here below, we have a variable called truth. And we set it equal to a Boolean value. So Boolean values are basically like true or false, and it tells the program whether or not a certain code segment should be executed. And I'll be explaining a little bit more about that in the next few slides. And you can see here down below, we're using variables to add and storing it inside another variable called y. So here we have y equals x plus 1. And as a result, now we have the value 2 stored in y. And in addition, in Python, we could print out the values of a variable. So here you can see here we have print string. And as a result, this will print out hello world. And in addition, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat as well. And I'll take a look at that. So is everyone good with this slide so far? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. All right, next is lists. So what are lists? So lists are essentially a mutable series of elements, and you could really think of lists as like a laundry list or a to-do list. In a list, you could add stuff onto it, or you could like take stuff out of it. And in addition, you could change the elements within the list. So if you look at the example here, we declared an empty list called R. So we gave it a variable R, which is just an empty list. And if we want to add stuff onto a list, we will call r.append. So the name of the variable of your list dot append, and then inside you'll put what you want to add onto the list. So for this example, we wanted to add a 1 to the list. So when we do r.append 1, that will give us a 1 in the array. So you can see here, the list is updated and now it contains 1. And now, if we want to append another value, such as 2 here, we would do r.append 2. And now we have 2 in the list. And adding stuff onto the list isn't just limited to numbers, right? You could also add letters or strings, such as the example right here. If you want to add the word banana, we could do r.append banana, and now banana will be on the list. And when you want to remove stuff from the list, you would call r.remove and then 1. And this doesn't have to be 1, so whatever you put in the parentheses is basically whatever you want to remove from the list. So you can see here, after we call r.remove 1, it's now removed from the list. In addition, you can also modify elements in a list. So let's say we want to change the first item in our list, right? We want to change 2. So in computer science in general, we usually start the index as 0. So the index 0 will basically represent the first item in the list. So if we want to access 2 in our list, we'll do r0, which is the 0th index represented by 2 here, is equal to 100. So by doing that, we're basically changing the first item in our list to 100. And if we want to add on to 100, say we want to add 1 to the item at the first item in our list, we'll do plus or equals 1. And you can see here on the bottom, now it's 101 right here. Cool. Does anyone have any questions with this slide? Okay, I will move on. So onto conditionals. So conditionals are basically, it allows execution of code based on whether a condition is true or false. And there are 3 main conditional statements in Python: if, else, and elif. So we have a little example right here that shows you how conditional statements work. So we created 2 variables called a and b. A is set to 10 and b is set to 15. So if a is greater than b, we would run the code that is inside of here, inside of the conditional statement. And in this case, A is 10 and B is 15. So in this case, we won't go into this if statement because it is not true. So as a result, we will not print A is greater than B. So if A is not greater than B, we would go down to the else statement. So the else basically says, if the if statement is not true, we'll just drop down to this else statement. Otherwise, if A is not greater than B, then we would print A is less than or equal to B. And at the end, you can see here we have another statement right here, which is kind of out of the conditional statements. And this statement will print any, no matter, regardless of the conditions in the conditional statement. And the reason why is because the print statement all the way at the bottom here, where it says print, this will print regardless of outcome, it's outside of the conditionals. So it won't matter if these are true or false. So it will print regardless of the outcome. Okay. And now I'm going to introduce the concept of for while loops. So a for loop can be used to iterate through items in a list or an array, whereas a while loop will execute a set of statements as long as the condition is true. So in the bottom left example right here, we declared a list of fruits. And as you can see, we've put apple, banana, and cherry in the list. And let's say we want to print all of the elements inside the list. How would we do that? So an easy way is to create a for loop. So we would do for fruits. And again, you can name this whatever you want. You can name this I, but you just need to make sure that it's consistent when you print, right? Whatever you print down here should match the variable name that you put after for. So right here, we're saying for fruit in fruits, in the fruits list, we will want to print each of the fruit out. So as a result, the output would be apple, banana, cherry. So just print everything inside the list. On the right example right here, we're using a while loop. So we initially set I equal to 1. And while I is less than 6, we would print out I. And at the end, we would increment I. And the reason why we do this is because, let's say if we don't increase the value of I, that will give us an infinite loop, right? Because I will always be set to 1 if we don't increment it. As a result, it will just keep printing 1, 1, 1, 1, like a bajillion amount of times, and it will just crash your computer. So that is why we need to increment I in this case. So while I is less than 6, we'll print out I, and we'll increment I afterwards. And as you can see, the output will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, does anyone have any questions on this slide? Okay, I will proceed. All right, so this is the last concept I'll be covering, and I'm going to be covering functions. So functions are essentially a block of code that only runs when it is called, and you could pass in data into the function. So the program could interpret it. In addition, a function can return data after it has been called. So to give you a clear idea of how functions work, if you look at the example all the way on the left right here with hello world, right here, we created a function called hello world. And in Python, whenever you want to declare a function, you need to type in def, D-E-F, and then your function name. And in our function hello world, we essentially print a statement called hello world. However, this function will not run unless you call it, right? So here we called the function hello world, and as a result, it will print out hello world. But let's say we don't call it, right? Let's say we just created a function but never called it. our program will not output anything because we didn't call it. So it's very important that whenever you want to use a function, you call it inside, or you call it as well. In the middle example right here, this is an example of passing in parameters into a function. So right here, we declared a variable called name and set it equal to Bob. And we used the similar function that we used in the previous example where we're doing hello world, but this time we're accepting a name. So you can see here inside the statement, we had it print hello plus name. And what that essentially does is it will concatenate or add the name that you just passed in onto the current print statement or onto the current string. So if we do hello world name, it will output hello Bob. And again, you don't have to put a variable here when you call it. You could actually just type in Bob with the quotation marks and it will still work. And on the right example, we have a function that adds two numbers. So our function add numbers will take in two parameters, num1 and num2, and it will return the result of adding the first number to the second number. And the reason why we use return in this case instead of print is because after we call the function add numbers, we want it to be stored into a variable. So as you can see here, we create a variable called total, and we set it equal to add numbers 1 and 2. So what this will do is it will add the two numbers, and then after it adds 2 and 1, it will return the result and put it into the total variable. So that's why when we print out total right here, it'll output 3. Okay, does anyone have any questions for this slide?
I have a question.
Yes.
So the values 1 and 2 and add numbers, the first parameter is values being stored in num1?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so if you pass in 1 here, 1 will just be stored in num1. And then if you pass in 2 right here on the right side, 2 will essentially be stored in num2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yep, no problem. Are there any other questions? Okay, I will proceed. Okay, so now we're on to the fun part. So we're going to be setting up our development environment. There are two programs that you will need to install. The first one would be Python, which is the programming language that I'll be using to create our adventure game. And we'll be also installing VS Code, which is a code editor that allows you to write code and run your program. So I'll be dropping these two links into the chat, and I'll be doing a brief tutorial on how to install each one of these. So let me just copy and paste these real quick. Okay, so first, we are just going to walk through how to install Python. So can everyone please click on the Python link? And let me know when everyone is on the Python page. Okay, is everyone on this page right now? Okay, I'll take that as yes. So once you get to the Python page, you will want to scroll all the way to the bottom right here. And if you're using a Windows computer, then you will want to click on Windows x86 64 executable installer. right? And if you're a Mac user, you will click on Mac OS 64-bit installer. So since I'm using Windows right now, I would be clicking on this Windows executable installer. And when you click on that, you would want to save file. And then once you've fully completed downloading it, you'll want to open the executable file by clicking on it. And you'll be brought up to this screen. And it's very important that on the bottom right here where it says add Python 3.9 to path, you need to make sure that it is checked. And that will make your life much easier later on. And once you have clicked on add Python 3.9 to path and it's fully checked, you'll click on install now. And for the purpose of this, I will not be installing it because I already have it. But you would just click on that and it should finish installing. Oops. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in the chat. Or if you want one-on-one help, feel free to hit up one of the directors and they will direct you to a breakout room and they can help you from there as well. So when everyone is done installing Python, please type in the chat so I know when to move on. Okay, has everyone finished installing Python yet? Okay, we got one person done. Thank you. Okay, cool. Almost. All right. I will be waiting one more minute before I head on to VS Code. And again, feel free to hop onto one of the breakout rooms if you are having trouble. Okay, got another done. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I will be, okay, thank you. Okay, so I will be moving on to installing VS Code. So if you click on the VS Code link that I sent in the chat, it will bring you up to this page right here. And again, you would click on your respective operating system. So for me, I'll click on Windows 10. And then same concept, you'll want to save the file. Then you go to your downloads and click on the executable for VS Code. Okay, let me close my VS Code right now. Okay, yeah, so once you click on the VS Code setup, it should bring you up to this page. And then you would just click on I accept the agreement, click on next, and you want to make sure that all these boxes are checked in the other section. And then once you have checked all these boxes, you will click on next. And then you will click on install. And then when everyone is done with that, can you all please let me know so I can move on as well? Thank you for the response. And I'll be giving everyone 1 to 2 minutes to finish up installing VS Code. It's all right. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Ray. Okay, so I will be moving on to the next step. So once you have VS Code installed, what you want to do is click on the VS Code icon right here. And that should bring you up to this page. And first of all, I want everyone to install the Python extension. So what you want to do is you would look on the left sidebar right here, and if you see these 4 blocks, click on it, and that should bring you up to the extensions page. And make sure that you type in Python in the search bar, and you would click on the first Python extension right here and hit install. For me, I already have it installed, so that's why it says uninstall. But for you, it should say install right here. And let me know when you all have finished installing Python. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the responses. Okay, got it. Awesome. So the next step after you finish installing Python would be to create a folder on your desktop. So simply just right click and click on new and click on the folder icon. And essentially this is where you'll be storing your Python file. So for me, I already created a folder called HackDavis Workshop, but again, you can name it anything you want. Then let me know when everyone has finished creating a folder. Okay, thank you. So the next step is to click on File. In VS Code, this will be located on your top left corner. Click on File, and then Open Folder. And then you will want to click on the folder that you just created. So for me, it would be HackDavis Workshop. and click select folder. And on the left column, it should show your folder name. And I'm actually going to be resharing my screen real quick. So okay. Okay, awesome. Has everyone gone to this part yet? Has everyone finished with setting up the folder in VS Code? Okay, awesome. So what you want to do after you finish setting up your folder is to create a file. So we would go up to the folder name, and you can see here there's like a little icon called new file. So we want to click on that and type in a file name. So for the sake of this workshop, I'll be typing textgame.py, and hit enter. And you need to make sure that your file ends with .py so your computer recognizes that it is a Python file. Okay, is everyone done with this part? Awesome, thank you. Okay, so once you've gone to this part, this is where we'll be coding up our adventure game. So as with any as with anything creating from scratch, whenever you're creating something from scratch, it's usually good to create an outline of what you'll be making. So what we'll be doing right now is creating an outline of our adventure game. So first, let me introduce you to how to create comments in Python. So to create a comment in Python, you just type the # and put your comment right here, right? So comments are useful when you want to like explain parts of your code that is not like as intuitive or that needs like further clarification, because usually like whenever you're programming on like a big project, sometimes like when you get back to it like a few days later, you might not know what that exact function does. So it's usually good practice to put comments in a code. So first, in our venture game, we will want to create a user inventory. Right, so this is where the player will be able to store their items. So to do this, we will create a variable called inventory, which is basically a list. So we have a list of inventory. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ben. Is that a bit better?
Perfect. Yeah, that's great size.
Okay, thank you. Okay, awesome. And now we will want to create a variable called coins. And this will be how many coins the user has. And as with any adventure game, we also have monsters, right? So we want to create our monster stats. So let's say the monster has an HP of 50. So we just set monster HP equal to 50. And then the monster attack would be set to 10. Okay, so is everyone okay with what we have typed so far? Thank you. So now we will want to welcome the user and ask for the name and character attribute. So what we will do is create a variable called username. So let me just put a comment right here. So welcome user and ask for your name and character attribute. Just close this real quick. So what we will want to do is create a variable called username. Set that equal to an input. So basically what inputs are in Python is, so we type the command input, basically takes input from the user. So whatever you type in, it will be put into the variable username. And inside our input statement, we will want to create a prompt, right? So we know that we're taking in an input. So within this input function, we want to ask the name of the adventurer. So we'll type, what is your name, adventurer? And again, just like this code basically takes input from the user, and whatever the user types in, it will be stored in the variable username. And then afterwards, we would like to print out a greeting to the user. So we would just type in print greetings, and then plus the username. So this would basically take in input from the user, and then you will print out greetings, and then whatever you typed in as the name. So I'll run it to just give a little example of what it looks like. So when you run the code, oh, and also let me teach you guys how to run the code. So on the top right, there is a little like play button right here. So basically that when you click on it, it allows you to run your Python code. So if you click on this, it will just run your Python code, and it will open up the terminal. And essentially what the terminal is it's just an interface for you to kind of run your programs. So when you click on play, it should prompt you to say, what is your name, adventurer? So I'll just type in my name, Alex. And then now you see here, it says, greetings, Alex. Okay. And is everyone okay with that part? Okay, awesome. So now we will want to ask for the character attributes, right? We want to set how many HP the player has or how many attack power the player has. So here we'll be setting the character attributes. Again, we'll be using the same concept as we learned before, where we'll create a variable called user attack power and set it equal to an input, right? So this will take an input from the user, and we'll prompt them to say, set your attack power. And whatever we typed in, again, will be stored in the variable user attack power. And next, we also want to make sure that the user actually types in a number instead of a letter, right? Because it wouldn't make sense if the user typed in a letter for their attack power. So we would be implementing a check right here. We'll implement a check to validate the user's input. So here I'll be creating a while loop. So while user attack power is alpha. So is alpha is basically saying while there are letters in your variable, then you would want to print out invalid input. please enter a number. So is alpha will essentially return true if there are letters in your in the input that you just typed. So by doing this, we're checking if the user has entered numbers. If they haven't, then we would want to reprompt them to enter a valid number. So again, we could reprompt, we would just type in what we had from above. Set your attack power. And this will ensure that the user types in a number for this input. And I will be running this real quick to give you guys an idea of what it looks like. So let's say I type my name, Alex. So now if I type in a letter, let's say like hi, it'll say invalid input, please enter a number. And if I keep typing letters, it'll just keep reprompting you. But if I type in a number, it'll go through and say set your attack power to 12. And below, we will want to kind of print out a statement to kind of confirm that you've actually set your attack power to whatever you inputted. But before doing that, I will want to set the attack power that we just got and treat it as an integer. And the reason for doing this is because when we take an input from the user, it's treated as a string. And again, a string is essentially a series of characters and letters. And for user attack power, when the adventurer or when the player picks up an item, ideally we will want to increase their attack power, right? And this will only be possible if the user attack power is an integer or a number, because it wouldn't make sense if you just add, like, let's say like a number to like a letter, right? It's not actually adding the value of user attack power. So that's why we need to do int user attack power. So this will tell Python, all right, treat this variable as an integer and store that back into user attack power.
I have a question.
Yes.
Couldn't you have just wrapped the original input with the int?
Yes, that is a good observation. So the reason why I want to do it this way, yes, it would be cleaner if you did it like that, but then we also want to check if the user entered like a valid number, right? Because if they entered a letter, then it will only work if we do is alpha. Because if we do, like, if we cast it as an int here, this would still work, but we won't be able to implement the user check, right? Because is alpha will only work on strings, which is what we get when we just type in input, when we just get an input from the user.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So once we have finished converting that into an integer, we will want to print out you have an attack power of, and then in this case, we will want to recast the variable into a string. So this is basically telling Python, all right, just for this statement, temporarily just treat this user attack power, which we have converted into an integer before, as a string, just for this statement. Because if we don't put string here, Python will not like it and it will just print out an error. So, and I can actually show you guys that. So if I type in Alex, and then if I set my attack power 12, right, it says can only concatenate string, but not integers to strings, because we've originally set our user attack power to an integer. So in order to resolve this error, we just tell Python to treat our original integer as a string. So now when you run it again, the error message will go away. Now it says you have an attack power of 12. Okay. Is everyone okay up to this point? I know we've kind of covered a lot of stuff, but is everyone ready to move on? Okay, got it. Thank you for your responses. Okay, so now we want to ask the user how much HP they would like to set. So again, we'll get an input from the user and say, type in set your HP. And then we'll be implementing the check right here. Again, we'll be essentially using the same concept as before while the user's health is alpha. We'll print out invalid input. Please enter a number. And then after we printed out the error statement, we will want to reprompt them to set their HP again. So this will ensure that they will enter a number whenever we get an input. And then afterwards, we'll do the same thing. We will want to cast the user health as an integer so that we could add onto it later. And then print out you have, and then we'll want to cast this as a string again, just so it won't throw any errors. So you have then the amount of health that you have plus the HP. And again, I'll be going just a little bit more faster for the interest of time. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So is everyone ready up to this point? Okay, so now I'm going to go over the concept of asking the user if they want to enter a dungeon. So this is where the real meat of the program goes in. So we're going to ask the user if they want to enter the dungeon. So we'll create another variable for that called enter dungeon. Decision equals input. And we'll ask, would you like to enter the dungeon? Right, and then type yes or no. So basically, this will take input from the user and ask if they would like to enter the dungeon. And again, we would implement the similar input check that we had from above, so that the user could only enter yes or no. So while enter dungeon decision dot lower, and the reason why we do dot lower is because it will basically convert whatever you typed in and convert all of those letters into a lowercase. So when we do the comparisons, it will be non-case sensitive. So we're saying, all right, the decision that we just typed in, the lowercase version of the decision that we just typed in, if it's not equal to yes, and if it's not equal to no, then we have an invalid input. So print invalid input. Please type yes or no. And then we will reprompt the user. Then we'll ask them, would you like to enter the dungeon again? And we can type yes or no. Okay, now if they do enter the dungeon, so enter the dungeon. If the user does pick yes as their choice, so if enter dungeon decision dot lower equal to yes, then we want to print you have entered the dungeon. Otherwise, let's say they type no, we're going to assume that from here, we're going to assume that the user did not enter the dungeon. And here we'll print out did not enter the dungeon. Goodbye. Okay, is everyone all right up to this point? I'll be moving on. So if they do enter a dungeon, let's say they've like encountered a crossroad, right? And they have to make a decision to go left or right. So here we would create another scenario where you ask for whether or not they want to go left or right. So let's say we just call this path decision, and we'll set it equal to the input. And say you have reached a dead end. Would you like to turn left or right?
I have a question.
Yes.
When do you know when to use double quotation marks or single?
Oh, yes, I forgot to explain. So basically, the double quotation marks are essentially the same as the single quotation marks. Like, there's no difference.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, yeah, sorry about that. Didn't explain that clearly. Yeah, so basically, it doesn't matter. It's just aesthetic preferences. Okay, so now we've taken input from the user to see if they would like to turn left or right. And let's say they decide to take the left road. So we'll call this the left path scenario. And we'll just say the user turned left. So if their decision dot lower, and again, the reason why we do dot lower is so like it's not, the input is not case sensitive. If path decision is not equal to, or if it's equal to the left, then we would say, we just print out, you have turned left and entered mysterious room. And then otherwise, let's say if they don't type in left, right? Then we assume so this would be the right path scenario actually. So we assume that they have taken the right path. So we're going to assume that the user turned right, and this would be what the else statement is for. We'll type in print you turned right and entered a mysterious room. And again, I know this is like getting a little bit messy. So one trick that I would like to point out in VS Code is that if you hover your mouse over to the line on the left, to all the line numbers on the left, for each of the conditional statements right here, you can see that there's like a little arrow. So by clicking on the arrow, it will collapse part of all the code inside your conditional statements. So this will make it like a little bit neater if you want to like work on certain sections of the code and don't want to look at the other parts. And then again, if you want to like kind of look at the code inside the conditionals, you would just click on it again, and it'll just pop right back up. And this will work for all of the conditionals that we have here. So it'll work for the while statement, the if statement, and the else statements. Okay. So once they have, so we're going to assume that they turn right afterwards if they have not typed in left. So let's go on and expand a little bit more on the right scenario, or the left scenario, I'm sorry. So if we go back up right here, and let's just collapse some of the code so it's not as confusing. So for the left scenario, so right now we're just working on the left scenario. So let's say the user finds a sword or shield, right? So prompt the user to take a sword or a shield. And again, here we would make we'll take input from the user again. So we'll say item decision, found a shield and a sword. But you can, which one would you like to? Let me just move this onto another line so it's not as, actually no. Yeah, so we'll ask which one would you like to pick up, right? We'll say please type sword or shield. So let's say they picked up the sword, right? So this is where we'll be coding the sword scenario. So user took the sword. As you can see here, like a lot of these have like similar concepts that we've already like implemented from above. And generally that's what you'll be seeing in a lot of like programming. Like usually like the same concepts will usually appear over and over again. But how you like kind of manipulate them will be what makes a program unique. So here we're going to be coding the sword scenario. So if they took the sword, so if item decision.lower is equal to sword, then we will want to print out that you took the sword. Then we'll come back to this later. But ideally, when you pick up the sword, you usually want to increase the attack power of your player, right? So here we'll just be updating the user's attack power and adding their item into their inventory. And then we'll fill this in with code later. And then now let's say they didn't take the sword and they took the shield instead. So we're going to another scenario where they picked up the shield. The user took the shield. This would be the else statement. Now you picked up this shield. Okay. And then again, similar concept, we want to increase the user's health right here and add the shield to the inventory. We'll be filling it in with code as we finish the outline. Okay, awesome. All right, is everyone okay up to this point? Does everyone understand what we are doing right now? Okay, awesome.
One more question.
Yes, no problem.
Maybe I missed this, but do you should we have like a input?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that? I think you got muted.
Sorry, should we have an input control for each of the user inputs?
Oh yes, yeah. Ideally, yes. I'm sorry. So ideally, we would want to like have inputs for the users. Again, like just for the interest of time, we would just assume that the user will always like will input like the correct argument. So, but yes, in general, if it's like for better practice, you would have a check for each of the inputs that you get from the user.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, and Christopher, yeah, there's definitely a lot to process. I think as you get like, a hang of it, a lot of the concepts will be like very like similar to each other. But yes, these are definitely very important to understand, like the conditional statements. But yeah, if you have any questions, yeah, feel free to type in the chat.
To check that they
Yes.
enter the right like kind of input, can you just use like a try and accept for like a whole thing?
Yeah, you can also use a try and accept. That's also valid. It just like, yeah, that could also work. So you would try this input and then accept that, but then you would also like have to like kind of like test out like if their input is like what you wanted it to be. Because I usually use try and accepts for like, if you're sure that this code will run into issues. So like if I were to like, let's say if I tried to like, print out, if I try to like use user attack power is alpha, if I try to like call that on something that is not a string, then I would have like a try and accept for that. So I'll try this out, and if it doesn't work, you would resort to like another path. I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, I guess it kind of does. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to be continuing on to, could be expanding a little bit more on the sort scenario. So let me just check if I got everything real quick. Actually, no. So let's just go back to a shield scenario. So once the user has picked up the shield, again, we'll prompt the user. Prompt the user if they want to enter another room. Exit the cave. So here we do the same thing. We're going to take in input from the user, and we're going to assume that the user types in the valid argument. Would you like to enter? Room or exit. Again, here we would, if the user decides to enter a room, we would just say user enters a room, encounters a monster, or runs away. Again, same thing. we check if their decision is equal to the room. If it is, we'll just type in you have encountered a monster. Or ran away. Otherwise, we assume that the user has already exited the cave. So the user exits the cave. Right. Cave live. Game over, bye. So that's basically what will be, that's basically the scenario that we have if the user picks up a shield. And then we will have a similar scenario for when the user picks up the sword. So as you see here, where you have some things with the sword. So let me just reference off my code real quick. So we'll be using the same scenario because, you know, if the user picks up a shield or if they pick up a sword, they still have the option of whether or not they want to enter a room or exit. So I'll just be copying and pasting this onto the code from above right here. And then we're going to want to prompt the user. Oh, my bad. Forgot the prompt. So here we want to prompt the user. Yes, we could also put it after the if statement, I believe. But the reason why I'm separating it into like two different if statements is so we can have like different scenarios when the user picks up the sword or a shield. So here we would prompt the user if they would like to enter another room. Or ask if they would like to exit the cave. And here, if they enter a room, they encounter a monster, but they don't run away this time. And let's say they've encountered a monster with 10 attack power and 50 HP, right? And here we want to ask, right? So if you've encountered a monster with 10 HP, you will want to ask if they would want to fight or, you know, run away from the monster, right? So let's say we would prompt the user again if they would like to fight or flee. So fight, flight, decision. Let's say we want to output your current attack power. So your attack power is then string of your current attack power. Then you also want to display your current HP. So and your HP is then a string or your current health. And we want to ask if they would like to fight or flee. just a quick check, is everyone all right with what we have so far? We're getting lost. Okay, I will continue then. Okay, so let's say, can you show the fight or flight code? Oh, as in like the decision right here? Yeah, do that. Let me expand that a bit. Yeah, no problem. And again, don't worry if you don't like get everything, because I'll be dropping a link to the code, the fully finished code I have. Because I know right now, like a lot of the time is being spent, you know, doing like the outlining of the storyline, and that's fine. But if you want to like kind of like fully flesh out the game and like kind of put some more functionalities, I'll be dropping a link to my GitHub repo, my GitHub repository that will contain the code for the finished game. Okay, let's continue. So now we're gonna check if the user picked whether or not they want to fight the monster. So if fight flight decision dot lower to fight, you decided to fight the monster. Then again here, this will be where we'll be filling it in with more code. Might or might not have time to get to that part. Otherwise, we'll assume that the user decided to flee. So fled safely. Then let me look at all the other code. Let's see, we got source scenario. So if they pick up the shield, we have next decision, next lower else. Okay. Yes, and we basically have almost all of the outline done. So right now, as you can see, we're basically done implementing the outline for when we pick up the sword, and also when we pick up the shield. And now we will finish outlining if the user takes the right path. So we are on the right path scenario right now. So let's say when the user turns right, and they enter the mysterious room, let's say they found like a pile of coins. Found a pile of coins. Would you like to pick them up? So then if the user decides to take the pile of coins, takes the pile of coins, we will want to print out you picked up all the coins. And then ideally we would have a scenario where the user enters a shop to buy items. And we'll fill this in more code. Otherwise, we're going to assume that the user did not pick up the coins. And they just like starve because they can't buy anything. Okay, so this is the general outline of our storyline. And then we could try it out right now. We could try running it. So again, you could do this on your own as well. So here, I type my name. And then I want to set my attack power to 12. And my HP to, let's say, 20. All right, if I type in yes, it will say you entered a dungeon and you reached the dead end. Would you like to turn left or right? Let's say I want to type left. And it says you found a shield. Which one would you like to pick up? And then if I would like to pick up the sword, it'll say you took the sword. And then if you like to enter another room, let's say I do want to enter another room, I'll just type in room. And it'll say you've encountered a monster. Would you like to fight or flee? Let's say I say fight. You decide to fight the monster. And the reason why the program ended there is because I've not finished like adding more functionalities to it. And we'll actually be going back to your code and filling out some of the functions. So I know that we're a little bit tight on time. But I would like to kind of finish one of the scenarios, which is when you pick up the sword. So if you scroll back all the way up here to the sword scenario, let's see. Let me get my finished code out. Okay, so where we're at right now is we're basically done with the whole outline of the story plot. And now we're going to be going back to sword scenario where we're going to be updating the user's attack power and adding the sword to their inventory list. So we will want to update. Here we will want to update the user's attack power. Simply just do user attack power plus or equals 10. And the reason why we're able to do this is because the user attack power is now treated as an integer. So it's an integer variable and it's treated as a number. So that's why we could add on 10 to it. And if we want to add the item to the player's inventory, we do inventory.append sword. And again, we declared inventory all the way up here at the beginning. So that's why we're able to use inventory. You can name this anything you want. It doesn't have to be inventory, but it's generally good practice to give variables meaningful names. So here we do inventory.append. So that will essentially add the word sword into our inventory. And we also want to display player stats. So let's say increased attack power by 10. The current attack power is and then that'll print out the current attack power that you have. And then we would also want to display the current inventory. So display the inventory. We'll print out items in your inventory. Okay, so basically a quick recap. What we've done is to fill out when the user picks up sword, we will want to update their attack power and then add it to the inventory. And then we're basically just going to display how much it increased their attack power by and the current items in the inventory. So if we run the code again, we just go back to the same scenario, type in your name, set your attack power, so your HP. Would you like to enter a dungeon? Yes, and then we turn left. And we picked up the sword. So in here, you can see that when you type sword, it will say you took the sword and increased the attack power by 10. Your current attack power is now 30, so you can see here how it actually added to the value of your original attack power. And then by printing out inventory, it basically just prints out your whole list, right? It prints out the whole list itself. So that's why you can see these brackets here, and you can see that now sword is in your inventory. And I believe we have a little bit more time. This is actually the fun part. So this is where we're going to implement how to fight the monster. So this is where the fighting begins. Okay, so here you encounter a monster. Let's see. Okay, so if the user picks fight, what we want to do is deduct the user's health by how much attack the monster has. And then we'll do vice versa. Monster's HP will be reduced by the attack power of the user. And print you attack the monster, your HP, user health. We're going to add the monster's HP to that as well. Monster HP. Okay, and then we're going to again run our code again to see how it works. So you type in your name, set your attack power, so HP. Whether or not you want to enter a dungeon, and then I turn left. I picked up the sword, and then once I enter the room, it'll say you encounter a monster with 10 attack power and 50 HP. Your attack power is 22 and your HP is 20. Would you like to fight or flee? So if I type fight, it would just say you decide to fight the monster, you attack the monster. And as you can see, your HP was reduced by 10 because that's the monster's attack power. And the monster's HP reduced by 22. Okay. And in addition, we will want to check if the user or the monster died right here. And I know that we're a little bit on time, a little bit low on time. We have 3 more minutes, so I'll just end it here for now. And does anyone have any questions for what we've just done? Okay, and also be dropping the link to the GitHub repository of my code. So if you want to finish expanding on the venture game, please feel free to do so. And let me just pull up that code real quick. So this is the code to the completed text-based adventure game. And let's see. Oh. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about Python, I do have a few resources to help you guys. And let me actually just paste these in the chat as well. And actually, the videos will be recorded. This is recorded, so and it'll be live on, yeah, it'll be recorded on YouTube. So feel free to check that out, and it'll also be posted to our Discord channel. So if you are not already in our Discord channel, please feel free to join. And I'm actually going to drop a link to that as well. So hold on for a second. This is basically a link to our Discord channel. And yeah, with that, yeah, thank you all for coming to today's workshop, and keep an eye out for announcements when the app's open. Yeah, look forward to seeing everyone at HackDavis 2021. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.